Welcome. Welcome to Community of Christ with the Shenandoah Congregation in San Antonio, Texas. Community of Christ is a welcoming and loving faith community. We proclaim Jesus Christ and promote communities of joy, hope, love, and peace. Please take a moment and like our video, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss anything, and comment to tell us where you are joining us from. Keep our contact details and share with us how we can minister to your needs. Find more information at www.seaofchristsa.org. If you would like to view past services, follow this link on our website. We welcome you, we acknowledge you, and we love you. Shalom.
Good morning. It seems a bit strange to be standing here behind this podium when I become used to presiding and speaking via Zoom the last couple of years. But as many of you know, I've recently been in San Antonio due to Jim's, my husband's, celebration of life service last week. And I want you all to know how much I have appreciated your support, not only for me, but also for my family. So before I get too emotional, let us move forward for the reason that we are here today. Today's theme is balance, abundance, and need. The supporting scriptures come from 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 7 through 15, which Kelly just read to you. While Paul was guiding, scolding, and giving pastoral care to the Gentile Christians in Asia Minor, the Jerusalem church struggled to survive. Finances were slim and needs were significant. The original apostles were based in Jerusalem, and it was considered the mother church, but many of the Jewish Christians were poor. They faced persecution from both Romans and staunch Jews and were often misrepresented to their Gentile neighbors. Paul began fundraising among the Gentile churches, despite or maybe because of the differences between him and the Jerusalem leaders. He hoped to help the Jerusalem Christians to cement relationships between himself and the original apostles, as well as show the unity and faithfulness of the Gentile Christian congregations in solidarity with the Jerusalem disciples. He used different words for the collection in various letters: relief efforts, blessing, priestly service, and in this letter, he refers to it as an act of grace and sacred community. The Corinthians had a passion for excellence, sometimes expressed in spiritual competition and conflicting goals. But Paul directs their striving for excellence toward a new goal: generosity, not as a command, but as a voluntary response prompted by love. Jesus Christ modeled sacrificial giving, for though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor. The riches Paul refers to are the closeness of connection and the power Christ enjoyed with God before becoming human, a wealth he voluntarily abandoned in the incarnation to show God's love for humankind. Salvation blossoming out of grace and generosity, undeserved and freely given, is the divine economy. The Corinthians promised funds for the Jerusalem church the year before, but something halted that process. Was it the pride and internal conflict that Paul dealt with in other parts of his correspondence? Was it the rift between Paul and the leaders in Jerusalem? Did they disagree about the amount to give? The text doesn't really specify the cause, but now is the time to complete what they had begun so eagerly. For if the eagerness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has. Community of Christ urges its members to give according to your true capacity, echoing today's scripture passage from Doctrine and Covenants 163:9. No one is expected to give beyond their means, but where there is wealth and plenty, there is a more significant resource for generosity. The time may come when the Corinthian church may have needs which others can fill, either financial or spiritual. Paul hastens to assure the Corinthians he is not pressuring them, but merely upholding for balance and equity. Paul cites Exodus 16:18 about God's manna sent to the starving Hebrews. No one went hungry, but there was none to hoard. God provided sufficiency for all. So, what is a need versus a want? Well, as I'm sure you all know, a need is something that is necessary to survive. A want is something that an individual desires, but would be able to live without. A primary distinguishing feature of a need is that it is necessary to sustain life. I asked a friend of mine who struggles every day with just financially meeting her needs. She lives by herself and her income is very minimal. She believes that you can survive with less. You can cut back like our parents and grandparents had to do because of war times and the Great Depression of the 1930s. She thinks we would not even come close to enduring the kind of hardship that they had to face. It is okay to know that you can live on less, do with less, and to just work hard to meet your primary needs. Put it simply, just simplify your lives. Now, think back to your younger years when you were a child, and each trip to the candy or toy store sparked an impromptu life lesson from the grown-ups about the epic showdown between wants and needs. I know I got that lesson, I should say. You may have thought you needed a skateboard, a doll, or another toy that other kids in class had, but you didn't actually need it. It wasn't a matter of life or death, but you wanted one. And sometimes wants and needs can feel the same to a kid as well as adults. As an adult, let's just think about this. You're in the coffee aisle at H-E-B or whatever grocery store you use, and you're staring longingly at some locally roasted small batch coffee beans. Now, in my hometown, as small as it is, it's got one traffic light. It does have a coffee company, believe it or not. And if you go through town at the right time, you can strongly smell the coffee beans being roasted. The name of this company is called O'Neill Coffee Company, and it was recently sold, but they're still going by the same name. And they also have their own coffee shop. I don't know what their prices are because I don't drink coffee, but I'm sure they're probably a bit pricey. However, the price tag is high enough at these coffee shops sometimes to make your wallet wince. What do you do in this moment of want versus need? If you decide to buy the coffee beans, your morning cup of coffee will seem like a splurge. But then you recall the cost of Starbucks or other specialty coffee shops' latte, and those specialty coffee beans start to seem like a bargain. It's all about perspective, right? It's navigating that fuzzy line between wants and needs, not just in your grocery decisions, but more importantly, in your relationships and life. Striking a balance between wants and needs and shifting your perspective from scarcity to abundance paves the way to mental well-being and fulfillment. Now, if you were building a house, you would prioritize foundational elements like a solid structure, functioning utilities, and a roof over your head. In life, needs are basic survival, security, and health. Much like that house, life itself wouldn't last long without addressing these needs. Here are a few examples of other needs: food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep, financial security, friendships, partnerships, and family. The takeaway in all of this: our basic needs should ideally be met before we pursue our wants, reinforcing the importance of this balance. Now, let's take a look at another side of needs versus wants. It is the illusion of limited resources, often called the scarcity mindset. It is the belief that there is a shortage, triggering feelings of scarcity and competition. In scenarios where there's an illusion of low resources, people often don't realize that the resources are abundant if folks are creative and work together. Sometimes the illusion of scarcity causes anxiety and greed, making it harder to see and share opportunities. How many of you, both here and on Zoom, remember the toilet paper shortage during the pandemic? I'm sure we all remember that. Was that crazy or what? I remember going to Sam's during that time and discovered that there was a big setup of toilet paper in the back of the store. By the time I got there, it was all gone. In just the very few minutes it took me to get from the front of the store to the back of the store. I was frustrated and I was wondering what Jim and I were going to do because we were low on the product. Well, this nice and generous man who had 2 big packages of the toilet paper in his cart must have seen the expression on my face. He gave me one of the packages from his cart and I thanked him profusely. I have also experienced gas shortages twice in my lifetime. The most recent one was during the pandemic and the other was in the 1970s. Talk about waiting in long lines to fill up your tank. During the 1970s, and I'm sure some of you remember this, you could only get gas depending on an odd or even number on your license plate and the day of the week. For those of you who are too young to know or remember, let me just tell you that that was also crazy. The gas shortage during the pandemic didn't last too long, and for the most part, gas was readily available and less expensive. But for the time that there was a shortage, or whatever you want to call it, it was just as mind-boggling as the gas shortage of the 1970s. Now I want to read a very short paragraph titled, "I Didn't Know We Were Poor," by Deborah Rowe in Arlington Heights, Illinois. I was born in the hills of Tennessee. There were 5 of us in our family. We had no indoor plumbing or furnaces. We got our water from the well, and we heated it on a coal-burning stove in the kitchen. Mom used that same stove to cook on. Our home had 2 fireplaces. At night, Mom would heat our beds with a bed warmer. We took our baths in the kitchen in a tin barrel. Mom made all of our candy and cakes from scratch. Our food was grown in our garden, or my dad killed it by hunting. Mom made our clothes, each stitch with love. Our home was always warm, we were never dirty, and our bellies were always full. No one ever went hungry. We always had enough, no matter how many sat down at our table. Funny thing about all of this, I never knew we were poor. And it was kind of that way in my childhood too. I know my parents had some rough times, but the same thing there. Our clothes were always clean. They were never torn. They were never ripped. We always had enough to eat. But again, we were happy. We didn't know that we were poor. Their needs and our needs were met, and everybody was happy. We had everything we needed. My parents took pride in the way that their children looked and felt. And like Deborah, we didn't know that at times we were poor. In closing, life is about making choices that reflect your values, aspirations, and well-being. Prioritizing needs and wants leads to happiness. Addressing needs such as health and financial stability lays a strong foundation. Meanwhile, fulfilling your wants adds joy to your life. Balancing wants versus needs leads to purpose, contentment, and fulfillment. Mastering the dance between wants and needs might seem tricky, but with the right approach, you can find that sweet spot and create a well-balanced and deeply satisfying life. May you all find this balance in your life with Jesus Christ as your guide and supporter. Thank you.